Hi everyone, welcome to Potluck Food Talks. Today we have our second mini episode of our mini series, The Line. So Phil, do you remember about Sergeant Beetroot?
Yeah, of course. How could I ever forget Sergeant Beetroot? There's so many wonderful stories of this very special restaurant where you and I met. It's maybe we should introduce the restaurant a little bit.
Yeah, the chef was this guy, let's call him Pierre Brandenburg. And he was actually a really good chef, but a very bad leader and a very bad manager. And it's one of the places where I lived with some of the most fucked up stories in the kitchen.
Yeah, it was a really strange time at this restaurant. I mean, we both spent a really long time there. It's obviously where we met. It was a really inspiring restaurant. It did very, very good food. And it had, for me personally, it had a very special dynamic, a very small team a lot of the time, and just a really, really strange atmosphere. I mean, in a good way and in a bad way also. But yeah, a lot of the stories that I think about today still come from that restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, we also have to say that how many hours would we work there? Sometimes 16 hours a day, like crazy.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah, and if I think back about it, there was no reason to do that. We were working as many hours just for evening service. There was no lunch, which is fucked up. I mean,
Crazy.
it's just bad organization. That there is no excuse. You should
Absolutely.
organize a kitchen in a way that you don't need to do that. This guy would put so much pressure. He would be there most of the time. It's not like Klaus. This is a guy who he also had many things that I respect very much. For instance, on the there was this story with the chimpanzees. You remember that story?
Yeah, of course I remember.
Well, the story goes like this: middle of service, and then like a complete rank of waiters takes a table of 10, which was completely ready, plated, warm plates, everything perfect, and they bring it to the wrong table. And this guy goes completely out of his mind, completely crazy, starts screaming like, "You all fucking waiters are illiterates. You're chimps with ties." And he goes completely crazy, and he wouldn't stop. He would go like, "And you're also a fucking idiot," only to the service staff. And I remember he would turn back, and I was on the hotline at the moment, and he would talk completely nice to me, like, "Okay, we go with table 4. Are you ready? Okay, you fucking idiots."
Yeah, he was such an eccentric guy. He was like he would. I feel like he did it on purpose a lot of the time. He was just like he was just letting himself go, and it's sort of like
playing his character.
100%. And like so many times, because you could hear him from the dining room. It was like a thing, like, oh, this like old school famous chef that is shouting at people,
Yeah, and I remember he would, like, when there were tables that would like ask stuff like you shouldn't ask, like in a restaurant of that level, like, "Could you please cook my pigeon a little bit more?" or this kind of things. He would like open the door of the dining room, and I've heard him saying, "Fucking Italians, fucking Austrians, fucking this, fucking that," all kinds of nationalities. And one day there was this table with the most annoying table. They wanted everything different, and could you do this and could you do that? And then I see him, and he wouldn't say not a single word, nothing. And then I ask, like, what's going on? Like, why is he not insulting the clients? What's wrong? And apparently these were Jewish or Israelis. And of course, you don't want to get in that kind of trouble in Germany and in Berlin. That's not something you can go to jail like in next day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But well, going back to the story, the chimp story, where he called all the waiters chimpanzees and these kind of things, then the matter, he would bully him so much, like, "You fucking fat faggot." And this was such a high level professional. I think it's one of the best maîtres I've seen in my life. I went to eat to the restaurant once, and I was really impressed by his way of leading the dining room. And he would just
Yeah,
humiliate him in front of everyone for no reason, and
absolutely. Yeah.
and for no professional reason, like you don't call someone a fucking fat faggot for no reason, period. Well, anyways, like he insulted everyone. This was, I remember, probably a Saturday, because then we had weekend, Sunday, Monday, I think, and perhaps we had Monday night service, and like 10 people quit that day. And I remember that because it was the hardest day in my career, was that Monday evening, because the service that we would normally deliver 12 people, we were only 4. So luckily, we had a super good sous chef. Let's call him Fritz. Fritz, super German guy, was a super good sous chef. And he organized the kitchen. We had to rewrite the whole menu to make it work for the capacities that we had. So, and we pulled it off. We delivered a good service. So in the middle of service, the chef comes in and he sees the whole situation, that everybody quit, that it's just 4 of us, that we've been working there all day, and that's something I respect, that what he did at that point. He went into the dishwashing station and did the dishes for the whole service. And that's something, I mean, this guy, I wouldn't say I respect him, but there were things that he did that, like this one, that are respectable.
No, definitely. I mean, he was, he definitely had his qualities, for sure. I mean, like I don't think super highly of him. He did a lot of things that were really fucked up. And, he was very racist. He was very abusive. But every now and again, he came through with things where you were sort of like, all right, you're doing us a solid.
So going back to Sergeant Beetroot, man, this guy, I hated him so much. He was so nasty.
Yeah.
And I mean, this guy, he had these things that are so wrong from someone working in a competitive environment, like being all friendly and flattering with the chef and telling his personal things and telling him he's so nice and this and that. And then being an asshole with his coworkers, blaming everybody for everything, having a super bad tone, using a lot of irony, a lot of sarcasm. Man, he was so annoying. But this guy,
he was super toxic. Yeah.
Yeah, but he developed this dessert that actually was a pretty good dessert. I remember that we after he left, we continued to develop that dessert, which was a beetroot dessert with sheep yogurt and lime panna cotta. Then it had like a crumble of cocoa and hazelnuts, and then beetroot in many different forms, like a sorbet, an ice cream, beignets, sauces, pickled, and then it also had the crispy elements of the beetroot and the beetroot
The
leaves.
leaves, yeah.
Yeah, like all the parts of the beetroot. But it was like it was like a really hard dessert to prepare, to have everything in place. And he was leading the station at the moment, and the guy would go crazy about it. I remember he was full of beetroot all the time. Like his chef's jacket was dirty all the time. He would like lick his...
He was such a filthy guy. I mean, like he was a little bit chubby, right? He had like a very round, puffy face. And he was always kind of dirty, and he would always, I remember him very, very well, because he would always kind of just like walk around and just like pick at things and just shove them in his mouth. And I remember that he was like, whenever you were prepping something, he would just like come by and just kind of start talking to you and just like start eating whatever you're doing. And I remember at one point I was dicing butter, and he was like stopped next to me, and he was kind of like, with this dirty chef whites. And he was just kind of talking to me, then absentmindedly just started like putting cubes of butter in his mouth. And I turned around to him and I was sort of like, are you eating cold butter? And he was like, yeah, why? And then just like walked off. There was just something about him that was just kind of grimy.
Yeah, and then he had this thing. He was like a fanatic, right? He would like, yeah, and we do this because we're so passionate, like really exaggerated, really like you felt it wasn't honest. He was just like also playing
Yeah,
his character, and then
exactly.
from one day to the next was the opposite. One day he's telling you playing this fantastic role of the passionate chef, and the next day he was like, "Oh, this doesn't make any sense. I don't know what I'm doing here. This is so shitty. I hate everything. This doesn't matter, like these dishes and everything." And I was like, "Dude, what the fuck? Why don't you just fuck off?" And he did. He quit, and I was like, okay, this is payback moment. So he had like a week before leaving, and for that week I remember having like a big pot in the fridge, and I would put every beetroot related thing to that pot, rest of sauces, beetroot stalks, pieces of beetroot, whatever I found, like for the whole week.
I think we have to like note that for people who don't know that there is a tradition in kitchens that when somebody leaves, that I mean, how would you call it? I mean, like if somebody leaves, then like on their last day, they get a lot of sort of like random shit dumped on them.
Yeah, and there are places where you just get a bucket of cold water, and that there are other places where people get really crazy about it and use like rotten fish stock or stuff like that. Yeah,
I've seen horrible things happen. Yeah, definitely. I've seen rotten fish guts that have been left outside for 7 days, and yeah, I've definitely seen horrible things.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, my action wasn't as crazy as that, but the funny thing is that he wasn't expecting it. So it was his last day. I remember this guy Fritz, the sous chef. I asked him for permission to do this. Like, can I dump like 10 liters of beetroot stock on the head of this guy? Yeah, sure. Do you remember how it happened?
It was amazing because so Fritz, he was a very strict and very disciplined guy, and so when you asked him for permission, you could really sort of like see it in his face how he was kind of like thinking about the situation. He was like, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, let's do it. And then he was like, yeah, I'll give you the sign when the air is clear. So basically, when chef has left, he's going to the office, and it's your cue to get the stuff and to dump it on this guy. And so service finishes, and we're kind of like finishing off, and
Sergeant Beetroot just finished cleaning his station, like the last millimeter of his station.
Exactly, yeah. And Fritz kind of goes like, "Hey!" And everybody's kind of like looks at him, and he's like, "That was the sign."
So I went to the fridge. I take my pot of 10 liters of beetroot juice and stock and stuff, and which was ice cold, by the way, and I pour it on top of his head, and the guy goes like, and he turns around and he sees me, and he wasn't expecting it at all. He wasn't happy either.
Yeah, he was not happy. And I mean, you have to say that, like, that these sorts of things, it's like, if you're really an asshole, if nobody likes you, nobody's going to do this shit to you, really. Everybody just wants you to leave and get the fuck out of the restaurant, right? This is like a little bit of like a rite of passage, Like, this is not something horrible that you do to like make somebody feel shit about leaving. I mean, this is kind of like a little bit of a sympathy thing, But he took it really, really badly. I remember his face going as red as his jacket was. I mean, basically, his chef jacket was ruined. I mean, beetroot, you could...
No, you know what the guy did? Like his last move, like in revenge for this, he stole some of my jackets and aprons after that, and he took them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well,
I had no idea.
Yeah, this is the kind of person we were talking about. Do you remember that there was this guy that he had like a notebook, and he would write down the insults that the chef would say because sometimes they were in a very sick way quite creative, and he would.
Yeah, they were. I remember that. Yeah, it was. I guess it's kind of like a coping mechanism, not to write these things down. But yeah, I remember. Like I remember a couple of things. I definitely very much remember that in service one time he said to me, um, he was like, I'm going to cut you into little pieces and put you in a parcel and send you back to Spain to your mom.
Yeah, and you remember to this Turkish guy, he said the same, but I'm going to put you in a fucking kebab and cut you like a doner and send it to your parents.
I
Yeah.
also remember one time, like I don't know what happened, but it was just before we were supposed to have like a cooking course in the restaurant. And and as you remember, like in the walk-in fridge, in the meat walking fridge, we would have whole birds hanging, sort of like guinea fowl and breast chicken and whole ducks and all that sort of stuff. And I can't remember what they did, but he turned around and he said to me, he was sort of like, I'm going to string you up and I'm going to put you on a hook and I'm going to hang you from the pass like a breast chicken. And so when these guys come in, you're just hanging there for everybody to look at you.
Do you remember this other guy who was like a punk rocker guy who lived like in a squat house? That I remember this guy cooked really well, and you could tell that by the way he cooked staff meal, which is always a good indicator of how good a chef is. And I remember
Yeah.
his staff meal was delicious, but the way he degraded from the moment he started, and then the chef started bullying him until the very end, like, and he would tell things like, how was it? He like, I'm going to make you kill yourself on your way home to jump off a bridge and stuff like that. Like,
Oh yeah, I remember that. And he was like, "You don't think I can do it? I can do things to you psychologically that make you jump off a bridge."
no,
Yeah.
yeah, he said like, I can do things to you psychologically that are not yet written. I remember.
What a freak, man. Yeah, I remember that guy really well actually. He started limping like on his third month, and and then he like started limping and saying he was having a problem, and then he would just not show up anymore.
And you remember the mantra of this chef was, whoever can take it, just leave. Whoever does not want motivation, you can leave. I'm not here to motivate anybody. And I just want the strongest to stay here with me. And he would say that every second day.
Yeah, I'm surprised actually how long we stayed there.
Yeah, we stayed very long, I remember. And we both left without ending our compromises. So the reason I finished, and actually this is one of the most hardcore stories, I lived in a kitchen and you were next to me. There was this event, I would say it was mainly for bad organization that many things went wrong in this event. An organization always comes from above, from management. And there
Yeah.
were like these tartlets that weren't good enough to deliver. And but I remember I was at that point I was completely sick of that place and completely demotivated. I mean, I've been working there for a long while and so many hours every day. I was just about to take vacations, and then this event happens and this thing happened. And so the guy comes to me, and you were like half meter next to me, and he gives me this look that when I've described this look to friends, it was like laughing, but like in a very crazy maniac way, like a laugh that somebody completely lost his control. And I did the mimic of this face to a friend, and he told me, yeah, people that have that face are about to do something really crazy, and that's exactly what happened. He takes the tartlets, like this small cakes with like a crust on bottom, and he throws me one, and the first one flies over my shoulder, and I'm completely in shock. Like I don't understand what's going on. It felt like a movie, like not real. Like this is what happens when you're in a shock situation. Then the next tartlet goes directly to my forehead, blah, and it starts crumbling down with the sauce and everything. And the next one to my shoulder. His wife was next to him and started screaming like, Pierre, Pierre, what are you doing? And another tartlet and another tartlet. And I would just stand there. I remember in my head what was happening was I can't quit because I'm taking vacations for like 3 weeks. And if I take vacations, I need to have a job when I come back. So I just need to take this shit and whatever happens next, whatever, you know. And that's what I did. I took vacations, and when I came back, I quit. And I remember the day I quit, the guy was like, "But come on, Eric, really? Like, no, but I mean, I want you to grow in this company. We're like friends. We're like a family, you know, like, you know."
Yeah, yeah. It was. I think it's probably the moment that I best remember from my time in that restaurant, because it was really terrible. I mean, like something he wasn't happy with something, and I remember us being in the pastry section. The pastry section was a very narrow sort of pathway, you know, and I was in between you guys, and so I kind of like stood against the wall, and so these like tartlets were kind of like flying past me towards you. And I remember him just shouting at you, sort of like, it started off like very calmly. He was like,
No, what you're just about to say is what happened next week. You remember?
What do you mean?
Are you going for the douage?
That was the same day, no?
No. This is what happened. So next week, so I remember at that time we would usually, I think we were taking the same subway. So we would always after work like have a beer and talk and decompress the whole service and work stuff. And I remember like like the week afterwards, and that was kind of like I felt it also like a revenge or like a comeback because I was supposed to take an utensil that was at the chef's station. He was cooking also in the middle of service. So I walk past him and I feel like that I touch him. So I turn around and I see him, and the guy was completely full of hot sauce. He just, you know, his face, his neck, everything full of hot sauce. I turn around and I look him, and I was like, okay, here it goes. So I went back to my station, and I remember he saying, "You better deliver a perfect service, or I will skin you off and send your skin to your parents in Venezuela or wherever the fuck they live." I remember I delivered a perfect service that day. But he wouldn't stop. He was like, "You asshole, you asshole, 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 asshole." And he would go up and down and up. And this lasted like how long? Like for 3 hours at least. Like he wouldn't stop.
Well, during service, yeah, the whole service. Because of his pride, you know, he couldn't take it. I mean, it's like an easy mistake. I mean, you turned around, he ran into you, or you ran into him, or like whatever. And he had, I mean, all that happened is that he had some sauce splattered on his white chef whites.
And his face. Yeah, I mean, what a miserable man. He's all day angry, locked up in a kitchen he built for himself. He has no loyalty from his team, no team. And well, just a few years later, he closed the restaurant.
Yeah, like 2 years later, I think. And I mean, yeah, no loyalty from his team, always burning out his chefs. I mean, the thing that he was so proud of, this restaurant was very vegetable heavy. It was very vegetable focused. It had a big garden that grew all its own produce. And so the entremetier, the garnish and vegetable section was very intense. And he was proud of the fact that that section was so hard that people would just burn out and leave, like that guy that we talked about would just start limping. And I mean, there was so many times where it was just sort of like, you, Fritz, the sous chef that we were talking about, and like 3 apprentices running a Michelin star restaurant. That's it. 2 trained chefs and 3 apprentices. And then this guy shouting at everybody, expecting everybody to deliver.
Yeah, and I mean, he doesn't have anything nowadays. I mean, he's doing whatever he's doing, but he's not like an important chef anymore at all.
And that really goes to show, right? It's like he was a very good cook, and he was very creative. He had really, really good ideas. But
No
that
question.
goes to show how you know, that's not the only thing that's important, you know. Being a business owner and being a leader and a manager, you know, is there's so much to it, and doing it in a really good way, in a way that lasts and that is actually productive, where people take something away from it, you know, that takes a lot of skill in a very, very different way, and he had none of that.